I messed up tonight. I lost another fight. I still mess up, but I'll just start again. I keep falling down. I keep on hitting the ground. I always get enough. See what's next. Birds don't just fly. They fall down and get up. Nobody learns without getting it wrong. I won't give up, no, I won't give in till I reach the end and then I'll start again. No, I won't leave. I wanna try everything. I wanna try even though I could fail.
Hello again, citizens of the internet, and welcome to Zootopia Minute, the minute-by-minute podcast where we review, criticize, and analyze every single minute of everybody's favorite hit Disney film from 2016, Zootopia. And on this episode, we are going to try and answer that all-important question: what is the meaning of life, the universe, and everything? That's right, we have reached minute 42, a very important number indeed. Woo! Woo! Hooray! Well, I'm your host, Simul, and I am joined here, as always, by my wonderful co-host...
Choco, who has just come back from a furry con, yet is still not furry.
Yes, you survived.
I did
That should
survive.
be one of those t-shirts, like, I went to a furry con and I didn't become a furry. I
have
survived.
not been indoctrinated yet.
Hooray.
All right. So hopefully this episode will provide you the answer to life, the universe, and everything. We'll talk about a
Indeed.
lot of fun stuff.
A lot of fun stuff, because it's been a while, and a lot of really interesting things have happened. But before we get into all of that, this is in fact minute 42. So for those of you who are following along, that's going to begin at the timestamp 4200 and end at 4259. And in this minute, we continue to see Judy's interactions here with Flash 100-yard dash here, as Nick introed in the last minute, which I was not here for, but it looked like it was a lot of fun. And Judy wants Flash to look up a license plate, which proceeds to take a very long time. So this minute begins as Flash says, "What can I do for you?" And it ends as Judy spurts out an exasperated 3 as she's trying to get this license plate number into this computer. So the very first thing I would like to say is thank you to everyone who came and saw our last minute live at EQLA. I really wish I could have been there. Unfortunately, it just didn't work out. But I watched some of that video and it looks like it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was fun. Though probably you are now the, I think, the head of events for Everfree. Is that correct?
That is correct.
You were probably spazzed out to see how poorly run their
Ooh.
events section is. And I could probably say that now since they're not coming back. I think this was their last
Yeah,
year.
you're
but...
safe to say it. You don't have to worry about upsetting that con.
Yeah, but if you
they're
saw
gone.
that room we had, it was such a small, cramped room. And if you saw the video, yeah, like
It
all
did.
4 of us cramped in a table that could probably only fit 2.
Yeah, that's what it seemed like. Well, and so for those who were there, or those who watched it, we had been sort of worried about that panel leading up to it because we weren't sure if we would have like a good sound recording environment. But it kind of worked out. We didn't have a good microphone to use, but because the room was so small, AC Racebest was able to put his camera really close to the table, and it picked up all of you guys really well, luckily. So big thanks again to AC Racebest, Saber Spark, and Paleo for joining you for that episode.
Oh, yeah. Actually, too bad we couldn't pan the camera, but that was a packed room. I think the room could fit like 50 people, and that room was completely full, and we had people standing in the back and outside. So that was probably one of the best attended Zootopia Minute panels,
Awesome.
especially for a con that size.
That's very cool. I wish I could have made it. All right, well, going straight on forward from that last minute, Judy finally approaches this desk where Flash is sitting, and Flash is asking, "Hey, how can I help you?" But very slowly, how can I help you? Because he's a sloth, and that's the joke.
That's a joke. I got the joke. It's so funny. Ha ha ha.
See, it's funny because sloths are slow. It's funny because of racism.
You know, actually, now think about it. So, full disclosure, I was at the Midwest Fur Fest where I was vending last weekend, and I saw a bunch of different fursonas there, but I don't think I've seen a sloth.
Yeah, I don't know how popular that is. Though, we'll all recall from this past Halloween, the one actual DMV dude who dressed up as Flash. We've all seen
was
that
amazing.
photo. That was so amazing. I love that so much.
Okay, so in the context of this world, yes, we could joke that it's kind of racist how sloths are slow, but hey, in reality, that's biology. It's nothing to do with anything else. But
Sounds pretty Nazi to me. I don't know.
well, I did not see that coming.
Hey.
All right, so in the context of that world, okay, so Judy was rushing Flash, like exasperating, saying, 3!
Yeah.
Does that sound rude to a sloth?
Yeah, that's something that I thought about too, because what ends up happening in this minute, and it's part of the joke, it's part of why it's so funny, is that Judy keeps anticipating what he's going to say, or keeps sort of reiterating things that he seems to be picking up slowly. But I wonder if sloths get kind of annoyed by that, or if they're just used to it. Because he doesn't seem to acknowledge it. Maybe it does annoy him, but he's just so used to it that it doesn't faze him that much.
I am on two minds about this. Like, one, assuming that they are also intaking information slowly, it doesn't really affect them as much.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it's kind of like the I must scream but I don't have a mouth situation, where they actually are taking in everything real time, and they're like, yes, I know what you said, just let me press
in their head the whole time.
And they're trying really hard.
Fast.
It's like the Flash or Quicksilver trying to talk with regular humans. It's like they know, yes, exactly what they're doing. They're trying to just say, okay, no, I could do this, just let me do this one at a time. So I don't know.
That's a good point. I mean, some of that anticipation, it adds to the comedic value of this scene a lot. So kind of the first thing that happens is Flash going, what can I do for you today? And as he's saying that, Judy is sort of interjecting after what can I do? She's like, well, I was wondering if you could, and then is interrupted by, for you. Well, I was wondering if you today. And then right after the today, I love the expression on Judy's face there, because it's this sort of like wide-eyed staring at him and like this kind of waiting to see if he's going to say anything more before proceeding. Like, have you got it all out? Can I go? Okay, well, I was wondering if you could run these plates for me. And it just sort of adds to the comedy there. And we talked about, not in the last minute because I wasn't there, but the one before. And maybe you talked about it at EQLA too as well. But part of what makes this scene so funny is actually the soundscape in the room. Because whatever that lady sloth's name is with the stapler, she's squeezing it so slowly in the last minute, and you hear every little detail of that, like... actually, I have a stapler. I don't know if I can do it slow enough. That probably doesn't even sound very good on there.
It sounds like really, really fast.
Mm-hmm.
The sound was very, very impressive in this movie, especially in that scene, because that's the only way you could get, slow-moving animals to kind of react at that pace.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think part of why they do that with the sound in this scene, and we talked about this before, but it emphasizes how slow it is. Because we're not getting so much visual information, because the pacing is so slow, they pad it out with the sound so that it's still interesting to watch. It's not just this long silence. And the fact that you're hearing so much emphasizes the fact that everything is going so slowly. It's kind of like, have you ever walked into a room where nothing was really happening, but it seems like your sense of hearing is peaked almost? Like you hear a fly buzzing around or like water dripping on the roof, and it sounds emphasized in a way, or it sounds stronger than if there was other things happening in the room. I guess your senses sort of adjust based on what all you're taking in. I think your body probably wants to take in the same amount of information at all times. And so if it doesn't get it from, say, your eyes, it's going to compensate by ramping up the stuff that you're hearing.
Yeah. And I will just say this. Judy will not make a great Jedi because patience she does not have.
Oh man, I saw that movie. That was a good movie, a decent movie. I thought so. So yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot of super interesting stuff in this minute just because it's paced so slowly.
But it's also probably the most shared clip, like we were saying, that DMV scene was the most famous scene. So I mean, we probably already talked the heck out of this, and everyone else has, because it's been shown even before the movie was released. So
yeah, so really all that happens after this is Judy asks him to put in the plate. He says, sure, I'd be happy to. And she reads off the license plate. He says, what's the plate? She says, 29TH number. 29THD03. And then we get this awesome scene of Flash punching in these numbers exceedingly slowly on the screen in front of him.
Which I think we talked about in a previous episode about the touchscreen applications.
Yeah, we talked about how you would design a touchscreen to work for animals because...
Yeah, because we saw the lion with his phone using the pads of his paws, which would
Right.
be like human fingers. But then
Flash
now we
has
see...
a claw. He's got
Yeah.
like claws, big long claws, basically.
So it's
would
pressure sensitive.
Like, would you have to design a screen differently depending on what animal uses it?
Well, that's the thing that kind of seemed a little bit off for me because the DMV in this world looks so minimalistic. And I just went to the post office recently, not exactly DMV, but similar. But all the old government-run offices still have these giant, big, bulking desktops and old keyboards and stuff. So it's weird seeing a DMV with just one tiny little iPad on a stand.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so minimalistic. It's like, it's okay.
Yeah, there's no way the government would be that up to date. That's unrealistic. Unrealistic, I hate this movie. It's unbelievable. There's no way the government would be that efficient in getting new technology.
I give it 2 out of 10.
That's a good point too, I guess. Well, Judy's trying to get this number into the computer. Flash is going very slowly, and he starts, okay, 2. And Judy says, 9THD03. 9. THD03. T. HD03 all the way through. And then my favorite part is they get past H, and then as he gets to D, he pauses for a moment. It's like, and then suddenly his hand moves fairly quickly forward to touch the screen. I think the screen actually moves a little bit, like he nudged it, and he goes D. But there's like a little delay there that I thought made it even more interesting. But again, Judy interrupting between every single thing. Like, if I'm a slob, I don't know, I would get annoyed by that real quick. But like we're
I'm
saying,
actually
maybe they're used to it.
surprised the other customers aren't kind of yelling at this officer. He just kind of cut all in front of them.
That's a good point too. You don't just go to the DMV and go straight to the front.
Yeah, because I've been in like I said, I was at the post office line. I was even at the Disney guest relations line at Disneyland and stuff, the registration line at MFF. And every line I've been to, like if someone cuts or someone's waiting a long time, everyone's just going to yell and be exacerbated and saying, oh my God. And the one thing that actually stood out to me watching this specific minute in isolation is the background characters don't really move. In fact, I had to watch the scene a few times because there's a lion, I think it looks like a lion, standing behind Judy and Nick when they're talking to Flash and a bunch of other animals, and they barely move. I thought they were cardboard cutouts. I saw like one leg twitch, but that was it. And even though like overall this is a fantastic film, like that tiny section just seemed like lazy animation for me because like none of the animals were moving. And I would be twitching, fidgeting, tapping my foot if I was in line.
Yeah, agitated, same. That's interesting. I'll have to go watch that again. I don't know if I noticed that, because usually Disney tends to be pretty good about the background details and making sure, even though you're focused on something in the foreground, they want to make it seem like, hey, this was filmed with a real camera. And so there's still things happening in the background, even if we're not paying direct attention to it. Well, the minute ends right as Judy gets to 3, the very last digit of the license plate, and she lets out an exasperated 3. Come on, 3.
Too bad it's not the minute of the episode.
Not quite, no. Yeah, so not a super action-packed minute because the whole point of it is that it's slow. Actually, it makes me wonder if part of why they included this in the movie was just to pad out the movie for time, even if it was just a little bit of time.
Well, I would say that this minute actually did answer the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything for me.
Yeah?
Yeah. Because the answer is 3.
Okay.
Or 42.
All right, either one, whichever floats your boat.
It's just a joke. Our number was 42. Fine, okay. Well, no more Hitchhiker's Guide and Star Wars references. Okay, let's go.
All right, well, that pretty much does it for the minute, but there are quite a few interesting things that have happened since the last episode that I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
Chief among them being...
Well, let me just say this. So a lot has happened since our last episode. You would think we would like to talk about our exciting panel at EQLA, where we also went to Disneyland and got to see Nick and Judy again. You would think it would be my first time vending at Midwest Fur Fest, where I got entrenched and got to meet a lot of furries and saw all the Zootopia fursuiters and stuff. You would think it's the rumors about the new Zootopia land being planned at Animal Kingdom, but it's none of that stuff. What do we want to talk about, Simo?
We want to talk about what is obviously the most important thing that has happened in like the past week and a half, and that is
Abortions! We want to talk about abortions!
on this episode of Zootopia Minute, abortion. All right, it's the abortion episode. Welcome. Yeah, so as I'm sure most of you know, there's been an interesting comic that has circulated around the internet, which is a Zootopia fan comic, which people are calling the pro-life Zootopia comic, because it deals with issues of abortion, and it's just kind of bizarre. But I did want to bring that up because it is so bizarre. It's gotten a lot of attention over the past few days. So just some quick background on this. I'm looking at it now on my screen. This was a comic made by an artist called Borba on his DeviantArt. And actually this comic was released originally a few months ago, I think like back in April or something. It was released one page at a time on DeviantArt over the course of several weeks. And it was there and it got some attention. It was maybe a little bit controversial, but more recently, someone, I think it began on Twitter, took an image from it sort of out of context and posted it. And that tweet got a lot of attention. And because of that, it brought a bunch of attention to the comic itself. And so now the comic has become somewhat of a meme. People have been using it as an exploitable image, filling the text boxes with other text. I've seen ones regarding net neutrality, ones that are making reference to that like 1-800-CONTACTS commercial or lost.jpg.
The air conditioning commercial, the famous Lost comic.
Yes.
It's become a meme that basically got the Zootopia hashtag trending on Twitter.
Yeah. Okay, so that was what was so weird to me. That's how I found out about it. Was I woke up one day, I go to Twitter, I'm like, oh, Zootopia is trending. I wonder why. Maybe they've announced a sequel. Maybe, it's something to do with Disneyland. Maybe it's the new world. I'm so excited. What could it possibly be? And then I click, and it's none of those things. I was so confused, and I tweeted about it. It's like, man, when I saw Zootopia trending, I don't think this was the first guess I had for why Zootopia might be trending.
We need to get that author as a guest on our show.
We could, because, okay. And so I just want to make this clear too, because the author has actually gotten a bit of hate for the comic. And there's been some comments on his DeviantArt and stuff. What we know so far is that, yes, the comic basically, and we should go over like basically what the comic is saying. What happens in the comic is that Judy, first thing you see is Judy takes a pregnancy test and it comes up positive. She goes to wake up Nick to tell him. The whole thing is this sort of somber tone. She's like, Nick, I have something really important to tell you. And she says, hey, I'm pregnant. And Nick is really happy about it at first. By the way, it's a shipping comic.
And I will say the art is adorable. The art is really well done.
Well, so she tells Nick she's pregnant. Nick is super excited about it, like really happy. And Judy has to say, no, Nick, stop for a second. Listen, I don't want to have this kid. And Nick's like, what? Are you kidding? And he gets upset, and it's this sort of back and forth about why she doesn't want it, like, well, listen, I didn't think it was possible. I mean, we're different species. Even if, like, I do have that kid, would it be a freak? Would it be some weird mutant? Would it be too large and, like, tear me up from the inside?
And they draw, like, this fantastic, horrific-looking bunny rabbit monster.
Yeah.
So I just love that drawing. Judy's imagination gone wild.
Yeah. And so anyway, the comic sort of ends up with, they don't come to common ground, basically. Nick is super upset that Judy doesn't want the kid. He views it as a reflection on himself, that he's, like, not good enough for Judy. It's like, why don't you want to have a kid with me? Judy's trying to say, like, no, listen, this is bad for my career. I have my career to think about. This isn't going to work out. And the whole comic ends with basically Nick walking out because he's fed up with it and he feels unappreciated and all that. And it's a very sad comic. Like, you get to the end of it, it's supposed to be a feelsy thing. Like, it's sad. And so the author has actually said, while like abortion was a big theme in the comic, his intention was not to make any sort of political statement about abortion, whether he's pro-life or pro-choice. That wasn't his intention at all. And honestly, when I read the comic, it doesn't come off super pro-life or pro-choice in either direction, in my opinion. What do you think?
I think we were talking about this before we started recording, and I kind of said it seemed like someone just copied and pasted an argument from 4chan or Tumblr between a pro-lifer and a pro-choice person. And it just seems like a copy and paste straw man of each side. And
right.
For me, it doesn't seem Okay, this is the reason why I don't ever read fan fictions of any property, not Ponies, not South Park, not Zootopia. And it's because these don't seem like the characters. Like, Nick addresses Judy as carrots, like, Judy says some lines that are reminiscent of the movie, but these don't seem like the characters.
You can also tell that the artist's first language is not English.
So for me, the abortion thing was just so weird because it's putting... The problem is Zootopia is a representation, a metaphor for our real world problems.
Yeah.
The movie itself was about whether you want to say is racial differences or
It's
class.
prejudice. It's about prejudice.
Yeah, it's about prejudice.
So I want to say something about that real quick, just as an
Sure.
aside, because the first time we did a live episode, we had AC Race Fest at Everfree, and there was a moment where me and him kind of had an aha thing of like, oh my gosh, we both agree this isn't about racism, it's about prejudice in general. Because he was like, I'm really glad you put it that way. And when I go on the Zootopia subreddit, there was something, I forget even what it was, but someone was excited because there was some article about Zootopia, and he's like, look, people finally get it. They're saying it's not just racism, it's about prejudice in general. And to me, it seems like the consensus among the Zootopia fan community is that it's not about racism. Like, the people that say it is, usually, I mean, I don't want to make a big sweeping generalization, but it seems to me that the people that are hardcore into Zootopia generally don't think it is about racism. They don't think about it that way. The people that do tend to be people that their main gig is examining media for reflections of the social stratification of society and things like that. They're looking at it externally and they're kind of looking for things that mirror what they perceive as racism, whereas the people that like Zootopia for Zootopia seem to all agree, no, it's not really about racism. So that's just an aside.
I actually don't mind either way. Like, I see this, I probably see it in the same way I see it as prejudice, but because sexism and racism does fall under the umbrella of
the same thing.
Of prejudice, I kind of... So I understand why you and AC and probably even me thinks of it as more prejudice from the perspective of a minority. I could if a black person like watched this film and identify for it, then I'm completely fine with it. That's why I liked it, because it was so ambiguous. You could have shoehorned, it was about feminism, it was about
meant to
racism,
be
it was
adaptable.
about classism, it was about urban society versus the city life. It was about you could do so much because the umbrella of prejudice was just so wide. That's why I liked it, because anyone could have picked any side from that. And we saw a lot, like most people who watch movies now, they say, oh, it's too PC, social justice warrior like, or it's all gun, too hard, cold-blooded American and right-wing ideology. I like that this one, anyone could pick any side that they like, and that's what media should be. It should be there to kind of give different impressions across the board.
Yeah.
But the problem with the this comic specifically is, even though they frame it as an ambiguous pro-life or pro-choice thing, it does have a specific ending that kind of...
It comes off a certain way.
Grounds it, and it's not subtle. That's the other thing. It's not subtle with its argument. Like, one of the best works of fiction ever made about the topic of abortion is the Ernest Hemingway short story, I think Hills Like White Elephants. And in the discussion, it's just a man and a woman in Spain. They're talking about how the hills look like white elephants. And it's just a really, really short story. It's a really, really obscure discussion that they have. But the entire story, if you let you break it down, is about abortion. And that was great because it was so subtle how they introduced that to the story. And for something like this, Zootopia is such a fantastic world you could build off of, because like the idea of interspecies relationship that can actually produce an offspring and stuff, that's fantastic. Or like we were making jokes earlier about, furry Jesus, like what is the religion of this world and stuff. There's so much stuff you could kind of build on it, but they frame it so much in the human world that it takes away from, like we were saying, like you don't see Zootopia as prejudice because it doesn't make a specific predators represent black people and prey represent white people dynamic. It's very ambiguous that you could easily switch the sides and it works either way. In this comic, it has a very, very specific, the pro-life message in this world Zootopia is just like the pro-life message
like
of
Judy
our world.
is
The
pro-choice,
is
Nick
just like
is
our world.
pro-life.
And that's the problem I have. It's too specific, not ambiguous like the movie.
Well, I don't know if I entirely agree, because I'm not sure how else, like how would you rewrite the comic so that it was more ambiguous?
I would keep it subtle. I'll keep it like the Ernest Hemingway story. It's like they probably are discussing something that hints at it, and it's not in your face. Because it's, for me, reading this, it seems like some Dumdishi artist was hired by Jack Chick to write a chick track on abortion. That's what it seems like to me.
So my response to that would be that I don't think the author, because the author has said, I'm not trying to make a pro-life or pro-choice message here.
And
The artist has said
I think
that.
that's a problem with most art. After a movie or film or a comic is released, it's outside the author's intention now.
Oh, no,
It's
no,
what-
I totally
Yeah.
understand that. A huge portion of what makes art is how it's received. And my old English teacher in high school would always ask us, do you think the meaning of a piece of literature lies with the author, the text itself, or the reader? And, there's different ways you can respond to that. But I certainly think that, art is meant to be reacted to. And part of the reaction is part of what makes it art. It's part of what defines it, I think. So you do have a point there. But what the artist has said is that I wasn't trying to prop up either agenda. What I think is going on here, because this artist is known in the Zootopia fandom already for making these sort of really feelsy comics about all sorts of different topics, and a lot of it is Nick Judy shipping kind of thing, and they're all self-contained. Like, it's not like this is part of a continuous storyline that the artist came up with, if I'm correct. But what I think happened here is the artist wanted to do another dramatic, feelsy kind of comic, and he said, okay, what topic could I do that would be feelsy? And it was, okay, we could do like a disagreement over whether or not to keep a kid. So I don't think the idea was, I'm going to make a comic about abortion. I think it was, I'm going to make a comic about Nick and Judy.
But there's so much topics you could do. You could do one about them arguing about adoption. You could do a lot of stuff.
No, I don't. I don't disagree.
If they want to do a fusey thing, it's not fusey for me. Like, it's shoehorned, it's forced, it's poor. Like I said, the art is fantastic, but the story is so poorly written. It's like plotted like a chick track. It just. It seems, it's just so bad. And actually, I'm not going to say my topic on the opinion, but I do lean more towards one side, but I understand the view of the other side. And I would say they argued my side actually pretty bad in this. And it's the character that I actually like in this story. And that character is not doing the proper argument. And there's like a lot of little things. Like they showed they had the bunny Jesus, Madonna and Child, which is just like...
Madonna and Child back for
so,
their revenge.
That
we
is
can't
so
escape
random.
Madonna and Child.
It's like why is there a bunny Jesus in we were joking about furry Jesus earlier, but it's just like that's what I'm saying. So you read what the comics author's intention is as a person who did not don't know anything about the author, and in reality, like you said, when we look at art, you don't have to know what the author was thinking to have your own opinion. I just think of this as some weird, first of all, fan fiction that takes these characters out of context, forces a story that should not fit, and it just does not work in any way. It's like, so for example, Man of Steel, a lot of people had complaints about how Superman acted, and the argument was, well, in that situation, that's the best he could do, and I side with that agreement that in that situation, that's the only thing Superman can do, even if it's not his character. But then the other argument is, well, that's not a story that should have been for Superman, that should have been for a different character. If you're in a situation where Superman must be forced to act like this, completely out of his character, then it's not the story that he should be in. And I agree with that side, because it's like, that's not the right story for Superman. And just like, this is not the right story for Nick and Judy. This is not the type of thing they need to be in.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying this is like a masterpiece of a comic. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that I do think that the guy that made it has received some undue hate because of it. And like,
it's expected now. I'm not even surprised that he did.
Oh, totally. But
yeah,
I mean, in any case, it's a bizarre comic. It really is weird. There's a lot of things that make it strange. You can see why it became a meme. Just so that we don't profit off of this without actually giving proper credit either. Just so you guys know, the comic is called I Will Survive, and it's by Borba on DeviantArt.
That's all I think about is the song I Will Survive. Like, just the way the title took me out of it.
Yeah. So one more thing I wanted to touch on before we wrap up here. The fact that this comic became a meme, it made me think how absolutely bizarre and totally baffling this must be to like adults, say baby boomers who don't know much about the internet. If they hear about this, how absolutely flabbergasted they must be. Because think about how many layers of separation there are from like the stereotypical non-tech, non-internet savvy baby boomer or older. How many layers between them and this you would have to go through. How many different things you'd have to explain before it would even begin to kind of make sense. Like, okay, first you have to explain what Zootopia is. Then you have to explain what a meme is, what a fan comic is, like the fact that people even draw comics about media that they like is somewhat of an alien concept to some people, older people, I'm sure. It must just be, like, imagine being some baby boomer and you hear about this in the news. how absolutely, like, you're having a fever dream. Like,
Well, I'm sure that's
what
how they
do you,
feel when
what
they
do you mean a
see YouTube poop.
Zootopia pro-life comic?
I mean, if they see YouTube poop, I'm sure they feel the exact same way. It's
Same, yeah. More of adults not being cool. You're not
Like,
with
they-
it, man.
They don't
Come
even
on.
understand the context of what the Brony fandom is, or every time
Exactly.
they see furry news, like, what, Nazi furries? What's this about?
Yeah,
So
like,
it's just
there's so many layers you have to get through before it even begins to make sense. So it's like, well, why is this comic weird? Because it's a fan comic with a political message. Oh, but what's a fan comic? A fan comic is like, well, you make a comic because you're a fan of something. Well, what is this? It's Zootopia. What's Zootopia? There's just so many things to explain, and that was just a funny thought through my head, like someone trying to understand this when they're not familiar with the internet at all. Crazy times.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird artifact. Actually, for the two of us who are used to pony fandom, this is actually not an oddity. Like, there's so much pony comics that deal with so many ideas and themes. Again, that's the reason why I don't read fan fiction at all.
I ain't even shook. I'm used to this.
So for a young fandom like the Zootopia fandom, which is about probably just over a year old right now,
yeah,
seeing something like this, yeah, it's an oddity, but they're going to get used to it. In fact, I remember seeing pictures of people when Nick and Judy were first announced and they're meeting their fans, like some furry made a comic and it's like, oh, did you hear about the furry fandom? And then the next scene, it's like a few days later and like Nick has a gun to his head. It's like, I can't take this anymore.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly. Man, you mentioned this fandom's only a year old. You know what? It wouldn't even be a year old if the Disney people had decided to just cancel the project from the beginning. You know, if they had just aborted the project, Choco,
Oh my God.
how would you feel then about the fandom?
pew,
There wouldn't
pew.
be a fandom. All right. Well, I think we've rambled on long enough.
Sorry we didn't have time to talk about our trip to Disneyland or the FurryCon, but I think this is much more fun to talk about than Midwest
I
Fur
agree.
Fest, but I'm sure we'll talk about it in a future episode. So.
Yeah.
Oh, I do want to say that Judy's legs look extra thick. I think that's a meme as well. Is that one of those
Thick.
memes, extra thick?
Spelled THICC. Yeah.
Because that's what I've seen tweeted and commented under it. It's like extra thick, Judy.
All right, guys. Well, I think that's going to do it. Thank you so much for watching and listening to this episode of Zootopia Minute. If you did enjoy the podcast, please subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter at Zootopia Minute. Like us on Facebook. And if you've got anything you want to let us know, your thoughts about the show, anything at all, you can send those to zootopiaminute@gmail.com. So again, guys, just thank you so much. We will see you again soon. Happy holidays, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas to all of you.
Rap, pew, pew.
Oh, God.